Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today I'm looking at a kit which is on the rarer side. It's the sparkle clear version of the high-grade Thunderbolt Zaku. This kit is from 2016 and was an event kit from the Gundam Product Art Exhibition which took place that August. I've had this kit in my backlog for a little over a year and have wanted to build it ever since I bought it, but my lack of experience with clear kits got in the way. This is my first clear kit, although I have built the Thunderbolt Zaku before, which was actually the first Zaku I built, so it seems fitting that this would be my entry into the world of clear kits. The high-grade Thunderbolt Zaku is originally a 2013 release, and while it may seem a bit outclassed by newer Zaku kits, I still think it holds up, although it does have some issues. The arms can only make 90-degree bends because of the molded joint covers, and the larger backpack does keep the chest from sitting straight. The shoulder spike armor is molded in two halves as well, which does leave a pretty noticeable seam line. The plastic they use for the power pipes is a little hard to bend, although this may be an age thing. Working with the clear plastic was a bit of a challenge as it seemed pretty brittle. Overall, I do really enjoy this kit, and the slight age is greatly overshadowed by the design itself. It has slightly chunkier proportions, which I do prefer. All of the additions seem like they have a purpose, and it doesn't seem like the redesign is there just for redesign's sake. It really fits within the setting of the Thunderbolt sector, a debris-filled zone of space where your surroundings are just as threatening as the enemies trying to kill you. After building, I washed the kit in warm soapy water just because the plastic was oilier than my face during puberty. This was probably due to the age more than anything, and after drying the kit felt much nicer to handle. After that, it was time to clean up the nub marks. I am pretty thorough with this step, going from 400 all the way to a 10,000 grit sanding sponge. The cleanup on this kit is pretty different from my usual method. I am using much more grits than I usually do because of the clear plastic. I also skipped the seam line removal even though there are some noticeable seams. This is because seam removal involves using plastic cement which could react with the plastic in a weird way. In my Zaku Amazing build, I noticed how the plastic whitened in contact with the cement, and I didn't want that on a kit this rare. I will try seam removal on a clear kit, but that'll happen on one that's easier to find. That being said, different clear plastics may react differently with cement. I think it would be valuable to test things out, but that would happen in the far future. I'm not sure if I'd be able to build a bunch of clear kits without going crazier than I am now. It also seems like a pretty expensive test, and I'm not ready to potentially ruin a bunch of expensive kits. This sanding, while tedious, is pretty standard stuff. I'm just using a lot of different grits, and one thing to keep in mind is that from 400 to 4000, I'm only sanding the nub and the surrounding area, but starting with 6000 grit upwards, I sand the entire part. When I get to 10,000 grit, I actually sand twice. The first is a normal pass, while I do wet sanding on the second go. When wet sanding, I don't want to get the sponge soaking wet, so I dampen a paper towel with water and use it to wipe down the plastic before sanding. And here's the result. I am pretty impressed with how it turned out. I always sort of knew that the different grits would erase the nubs and polish up the plastic nicely, but actually putting this into practice made a difference in confirming my theory. Now I'm just sanding the rest of the kit. I'm only choosing to sand the clear parts where the nubs are visible, and I don't even focus on the gray parts. Because this kit is so visually busy, some of the nub marks are hidden underneath all of the sparkle. As you've seen, I'm using sanding sponges instead of sandpaper, except for the 1000 grit, and I wanted to briefly discuss why. In terms of organization, I like the smaller size of the sponges, and with the sponges, I can have all the different grits on my cutting mat in order from coarse to fine, which allows me to work pretty efficiently. Sanding sponges also have a bit of squish, which helps them form to curved surfaces and keeps them from sanding some flat spots where I don't really need them. It should be noted that these sponges are from Godhand, which means absolutely nothing. I only use this brand because it's what my local hobby store stocks. I'm fairly sure that you can find cheaper sanding sponges in the same exact grits, or even make your own sanding sticks with sandpaper of these various grits. It's very evident how in-depth this method is, but I wanted to do a comparison with gun primer sanding tools because those are considered by many to be the standard in gate removal. Going off Gun Primer's website, the razor starts at 400 grit while the balancer starts at 600 grit and works up to 2000 grit. So in terms of the numbers I could gather, my method is more intensive than Gun Primer's tools. And I'm not saying my method is better than theirs, and the Gun Primer tools do have the advantage of being very streamlined. It's just that for the time being, I have something that is pretty comparable. The gun primer tools do seem like they can be used for longer than these sponges, so it seems like a good investment. It's just that I don't usually have a need for tools like that since I tend to paint everything I build. And on the topic of being streamlined, there is always the possibility that many of the grits I use are redundant. However, I wanted to play things safe for this build. I'm not sure if I'll even find out if things end up being redundant, just because of the plastic being used and how different it is compared to other clear plastic I've seen. I'm adding a few Xeon markings just to break up the green and black. I'm moving these around with my fingers instead of the usual tweezers or hobby blade, just so I don't scratch the plastic. It does take more time, but I eventually line these up to where I want them. And after the decals dried, I sprayed a coat of semi-gloss to seal the decals, and several coats of gloss to build up more of a shine. And here it is. I want to thank you all for watching. I know this isn't the usual kind of video, but I hope some of you can find it useful if you're looking to get into clear kits. They may seem intimidating, but they aren't so bad after all. If you liked the video, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, whenever that is.